so with regards to a year President John Dramani Mahama already ne visit to a year the Lincoln University instead of ya cancel but no there is a year an event eba so with reparatory a year justice womo pray through the AU leading Ghana leading no na ene as ajumedie no ebe koso on your screen so say high level special event on reparatory justice conveyed by President John Dramani Mahama in Tiebeko 10 a.m. New York local time, 2 p.m. Ghana local time. Timino ka say there ukopiemu ewo UN headquarters jumedie no asha sekra dada. Now this is coming from the presidency communications or say President Mahama to lead a wreath laying ceremony at the African burial grounds. On Tuesday, March 24th, 2026, President John Dramani Mahama will lead a solemn wreath laying ceremony at the African burial ground National Monument in the Lower Manhattan, New York, marking a historic movement of ancestral reconnection, serving as the African Union champion for reparations. President Mahama will offer the floral tribute as a precursor to a landmark United Nations resolution seeking to declare the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. Inti we ade ayabo ho de rokra dada se mampani enede obekwa kodi anim ama yakaye nananom a yede wo fa yakayaka muni obre fa gate of no return wo Cape Coast Castle Elmina Castle ni ade a wo mko breye all in the name of slave trade no ene na sabre de wo mo kai wo mo a wo mo di nsure ni ade ebekwa koto monument honom de akai wo mo New York. Now, no, there've been a press briefing now. Me no ka say the African Union group, Ghana, a representative, what a year US no wababe kasa about jumedie na woni nsentro ehyiemu a omo ede de ebekọ so ene nyina no ababe tudwa yebekọ na yakwakotie ensem a womo ede tudwa ebusia yenko na yenkotie omo.
Good morning, distinguished delegates and excellencies. Welcome to the press briefing on the draft resolution on the African Group resolution entitled The Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and the Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans, which is to be tabled before the General Assembly on 25th March 2026 on behalf of the African Group. On the podium in the middle is Ghana's permanent representative to the United Nations, His Excellency Ambassador Samuel Kuma. To his right is the permanent representative of the Angolan mission, His Excellency Francis Hussein. And to the left is the chargé of the AU Permanent Observer Mission to the United Nations, Mr. Salim Mustaq. At this point, I will hand over the podium to His Excellency Samuel Ambassador Kuma to begin with the briefing. Thank you.
Excellencies, members of the press, distinguished colleagues, good morning and thank you for joining us today. I have the honor to address you on behalf of the Africa Group as part of our collective efforts to mobilize global support for the draft General Assembly resolution entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as the greatest crime against humanity. This initiative did not arise suddenly, nor is it the undertaking of a single nation. It is the result of a clear continental mandate grounded in decision taken at the highest political level of Africa's multilateral institution, the African Union. In February 2024, at its 37th ordinary session, the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union adopted a decision, that's Decision 884, designating the theme of the year 2025 as Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. This landmark decision elevated reparations for the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and apartheid to a flagship priority of the Union, affirming Africa's collective commitment to historical justice, dignity, and restoration. Pursuant to this decision, the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, was appointed African Union champion for advancing the cause of justice and the payment of reparations to Africans. This mandate reflects not only continental responsibility, but also a solemn moral thrust to pursue acknowledgement, truth, restorative justice for crimes whose consequences continue to shape global inequality. In September 2025, during the General Assembly debate of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, the President of Ghana announced the country's intention to lead the tabling of a draft resolution on the declaration of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the grievous crime against humanity. This initiative was further strengthened in February 2026 when the 39th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union formally endorsed the draft resolution and urged all member states to fully support the initiative of the AU champion for reparations at the United Nations. This endorsement provided clear continental political authority and reflected a unified African voice. Accordingly, the draft resolution was submitted to the United Nations by Ghana on behalf of the African Group. Ladies and gentlemen, let me emphasize clearly, this resolution has been developed through a transparent, inclusive, and procedurally rigorous process, fully consistent with United Nations practice. Over the course of negotiations, delegations participated in 7 rounds of informal consultations, each lasting 3 hours, devoted exclusively to this test instead of the usual 1.5 hours. In practical terms, delegations devoted twice the normal negotiating time typically allocated to most General Assembly resolutions. Let me emphasize clearly, this resolution has been developed through a transparent, inclusive, and procedurally rigorous process fully consistent with the UN established practice. Over the course of, I think I may be repeating myself here, beyond these formal consultations, ladies and gentlemen, the Africa Group engaged extensively with regional and political groupings across the UN membership, incorporating feedback and carefully considering proposals aimed at fostering broad understanding and consensus. Every delegation that wished to contribute was afforded the opportunity to do so. The test now before the Assembly is therefore the product of sustained dialogue, compromise, and good faith multilateral engagement. Action on the resolution is expected on 25th March 2026, following notification by a delegation of its intention to call for a vote on the draft, and in light of questions concerning that have been raised during the final phase of consideration, the Africa Group considered it both necessary and responsible to engage member states directly. Accordingly, this briefing is being convened to provide clarity, address outstanding issues transparently, and ensure that delegations approach the forthcoming vote with a full and accurate understanding of the resolution's purpose. The resolution's purpose, scope, and intent. Our objective is simple: that decisions taken in the General Assembly be informed by dialogue, clarity, and shared understanding rather than misunderstanding and uncertainty. Ladies and gentlemen, against this backdrop of extensive consultation and careful negotiation, it is important to recall what this resolution fundamentally seeks to achieve. At its core, this resolution advances a simple but profound proposition: the trafficking and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans was a world-breaking event, the moment when humanity itself was reorganized into a global hierarchy of race, labor, property, and capital, and helped construct the global economic and racial order whose legacies continue to shape our world today. Its consequences extend far beyond Africa. It accelerated indigenous dispossession in the Americas, influenced systems of indentured labor across Asia, reshaped global trade and finance, and contributed to ecological transformations whose effects remain visible in today's climate crisis. This resolution, therefore, does not seek to rank suffering or diminish other historical tragedies. Rather, it identifies a historical turning point that redefined humanity itself and established structures that continue to influence global inequalities and opportunities in the present day. By recognizing this historical reality, the international community strengthens its capacity to address contemporary challenges rooted in that shared past. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, during negotiations, some delegations have raised legal and technical concerns, particularly regarding language used in the title and operative provisions. We wish to address these concerns respectfully, but clearly. The concern has been raised that describing the trafficking and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the grievous crime against humanity creates a hierarchy among historical atrocities. Respectfully, that interpretation is misplaced. First, the resolution does not rank suffering, nor does it attempt to create a legal hierarchy of crimes against humanity. Every atrocity, genocide, apartheid, colonial violence, and other crimes recognized under international law remains unequivocally condemned. The resolution simply identifies the historical mechanism that fundamentally restructured the world. A useful analogy may help clarify this point. A cardiologist identifying the heart as central to systemic collapse is not ranking organs in order of value. They are identifying causation within a system. In the same way, this resolution recognizes that the trafficking and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans constituted the historical rupture that helped inaugurate the modern racialized global order. Identifying that structural role is not an exercise in comparative suffering. It is an exercise in historical clarity. Second, from a legal standpoint, the concern cannot hold for two reasons. First, General Assembly resolutions of this nature are declaratory political instruments, not judicial determinations. They do not and cannot establish legally binding hierarchies of crime within international criminal law. The legal framework governing crimes against humanity remains unchanged. When the title is read together with the operative text, it is clear that the resolution makes a political and historical recognition, not a judicial categorization. Further, international law itself already recognizes that certain acts may be described in superlative moral terms without creating legal hierarchies. The international community has, for example, described some crimes as the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole. Such a language reflects the scale, systemic nature, and historical impact of particular atrocities, not a legal ranking of human suffering. In that same spirit, the resolution recognizes the trafficking and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as a crime whose consequences restructured global systems of labor, property, race, and capital, shaping the world within which subsequent atrocities occurred. Excellencies, for over 5 centuries, when our ancestors were reduced to property, the law was invoked to justify it. When racial segregation and hierarchy were enforced, the law was again used to sustain it. And today, when we seek simply to name this historical truth through resolution, we once again hear arguments wrapped in legal technicalities. Technicalities that risk silencing voices and obscuring historical reality. The law must never again serve as a shield to avoid truth. It must instead stand where it belongs, on the side of justice, memory, and the dignity of humanity. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this moment calls for courage. The General Assembly now has an opportunity to affirm that confronting his history honestly strengthens rather than divides our shared humanity. Supporting this resolution is not an act of accusation,